Hello and welcome to the Applied Leadership Coaching Podcast. My name is Jason Neman. I'll be your host today. I'm here with two wonderful people, Steve Scalia from Tanner Pharma and Tim Gustafson, the lead man at Applied Leadership Coaching. And we're so happy to have you, Steve. Want to do quick introductions of both of you. This is going to be one of two special podcasts that we're doing with Steve because we've got some really great content, and we also don't want to make this run too long, of course.
Yep.
So, Tim, talk a little bit about why Steve is here, why you chose Steve to have him on your podcast.
Excellent. So, Steve, welcome, first of all.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Appreciate you and the way you go about your business. Your clarity, your thought process is fantastic. You bring that into our Vistage groups, which is just a fantastic opportunity to share not only your knowledge and your experience, but also helping others to understand and solve their problems. So from that perspective, yeah, you're a perfect guy to be on this, sort of kicking off our three-way pod. But yeah, we welcome you, and it's good to have you here. And as always, Jason, it's great to connect with you and be with you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. And Tim, I'll just say you're too gracious. I don't think I will live up to those accolades. But at the same time, with my career, there's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And one of the best things about it is if I feel like I can share anything that might help anybody, even 5 or 10%, and give back a little bit from the lessons learned, always happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, and that's really the purpose of why we're here, is we want to share some insights and value that we might have and perspectives. We learn a lot in the peer group, but also, how does that translate out into the world? And we have a lot going on these days.
Yeah.
It is a complicated world. There's chaos. There's all sorts of change happening at this point. And so every small business has different things that they have to deal with. So the hope, I think, in our discussions here is that we can at least bring a couple of nuggets for people to take away.
Yeah, and I love the format too. Quick hits on current affairs and those sorts of things. So there's always a lot of topics out there for us to come across.
Yeah.
That's great. So one of the things we wanted to start with was we've had a couple of conversations with Steve over the years, but really one of the things that we've talked a lot about is you running and gunning at the beginning of your career,
Right.
and how that's transitioned into a more strategic thinking, governance, really thinking about it. And since your position at Tanner Pharma is, really kind of to lead that strategic vision, how do you approach that?
Yeah, it's a good point. And my career started with formal structured sales training within a really big organization. That only lasted 2 years before the entrepreneurial itch got me, and a good friend of mine from high school and I started our first business and spent about 15 years in a business ownership, entrepreneurial environment where, for most who know, you're wearing multiple hats, especially to start, and then as you have the benefit of growth, you can also be hiring people to take certain hats, but there's a mindset to just trying to maybe do more than you think you can do, and especially at a young age, it starts with being more naive than experienced. And we used to joke about sort of leaning on our naivete to have the confidence to move forward with something, even when we didn't know how it was going to work out.
And that seller-doer role is so hard because you have to do both. And how much do you dedicate to each one? It's tough.
Yeah,
it's a tough place.
And then at that point too, not recognizing steps that could help us move forward in the natural sort of trajectory of a maturing business. And maybe if I would have known the things I know now. So my other business partners from the past and I have joked now that at the time we would take naivete over experience, but now we recognize how valuable experience is over naivete. And this is what we were getting at when we were talking about this topic. How many mistakes do you make before you insist on there being a change? How long do you spend being reactive before you get over the hump and agree to be proactive? And I think some people may have a personality that takes them in that direction earlier than it did for me. It took some very difficult, hard lessons learned to move into the next direction. And I wouldn't go back, I wouldn't wish it on anybody else to be in that reactive running and gunning phase.
Yeah,
And pain is a great teacher.
Unfortunately.
it is indeed.
We all know that.
It is indeed. So one of the things that I've heard you talk about in the past, which I think is really relevant to this point, is you're a natural problem solver. So you like to jump in when there's a problem, but being in the position you're in, what are some of the challenges with that you've sort of learned over the past couple of years that have really changed your perspective on that?
It's a great point. What does a problem solver need who has a superpower of solving problems? You need problems. So I got into a habit of waiting until the problem came up to, reveal the superpower. But that wasn't getting us out ahead of problems that would come up, or enough kind of continuous improvement learning from the past in order to avoid them in the first place. So probably starting in 2018 was when I had the initial form of an awakening, but it was really post-COVID where it started to settle in, and I owe a lot to the senior management team that I work with now, all of whom are more experienced every single year, and as they elevate, they've allowed me to elevate up to a level where I don't feel the need to do those sorts of things as much anymore, and I've got a lot more confidence that I'm working on the right things, and even if that is not exactly the problem solving, if I'm helping to avoid the problems, it's really taking the lessons learned and pertaining them to moving forward.
And part of that too, there's also a delegation thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we like to not delegate because we can solve the problem.
Yeah.
But as we're able to do that
Yeah.
and really trust our people and allow them and trust ourselves to sort of stay out of it,
You got it.
which is a hard thing.
Yeah.
Boy, it makes a huge difference because then scalability becomes part of the process.
Yeah. Well, you guys have heard me refer to myself as a recovering non-delegator.
Yes.
And I think when I embrace the reality that I will always be a non-delegator and that it's very difficult, then it helps me to move on in the steps to become a better delegator. And there were a couple things that helped me get to that point. In order to be more proactive, have a more of a strategic view, and to embrace governance, I had to give up some things. How do I give those things up? I have to give them to other people. And it took a while to learn this, but a couple things. When someone said to me that if someone else can do something 80% as well as you, it's the type of thing you need to delegate. It took the pressure off. And if anybody who has a streak of perfection, and a lot of entrepreneurs do, they've got a high expectation for what the product is going to be. It's hard to let things go, especially when there's excuses like, it's just faster for me to do it, or it'll take me longer to explain it to somebody else. That's missing the opportunity to make an investment in somebody who can then take it on forever. And when I realized that the 80% rule is actually not true, a lot of times people can do it at 100% as well as you, or 120. They can do it better than you. It takes a little bit of take a deep breath and embrace this, and that's what the company needs, not just what I need or what they need. It all kind of starts to make sense and it starts to flow. So I've become a lot more secure in just allowing people to do what they're best at, and then allowing myself to work on not to get more free time or more time at home or more vacation time, but to actually spend my time on the things that are most important for the company.
Yeah. And it allows them to grow too. You're giving off something that's very important to yourself.
Yep.
And they take it on and they're going to do a great job because they want to do a great job for you and so forth.
Completely agree.
But that then leads you to this opportunity that what is available then for you to do now that you're not taking all this time solving problems and in the reactive, detailed stuff.
Right.
So speak a little bit about the strategic approach that you're involved in now and how that's sort of come about.
So I'm a complete convert now on governance and having more of a holistic long-term strategy. When times are tight, when you're in a startup mode, when you're trying to grow and stay ahead of the wave of expenses and difficulty and competition that's coming up behind you, it's almost like I shortened the vision perspective that we had at the time. We gotta sell today. We got to sell this week. But it was never about what are we doing for a 5-year plan. And in the past, when people even say, what's our strategy? I'd say, accomplish our goals for this month, because that leads us to accomplishing our goals for this year. And it's close, and we've got to hit and if we hit our year this year, we've earned our budget for next year. And that seemed like an equation that was working. We had a lot of success hitting numbers, but it wasn't within the context of a bigger vision or a bigger strategy. So once I finally also recognized that how we accomplish things, our strategy for how is separate than a go-to-market strategy, and I could put those in different buckets, it helped me realize that what our team needed and what they were asking for was a go-to-market strategy. And we had pretty well figured out how we do business. We can codify that and then move on to achieving bigger and better things on a long-term horizon.
Excellent. Excellent.
That's great. Well, we talked a little bit about, quick hits, right? So one of the big quick hits right now that's really affecting not just your company, but probably all of us in some way, are the changes in the administration, what's happening with that. So from your perspective, when it comes to Tanner Pharma, what are some of the challenges you're seeing?
So first, tell us a little bit about the business that you're in.
Sure,
It's not just a national thing.
Yeah.
You guys are international.
Yeah, really
mainly.
fortunate. We're in a business that's got a great core purpose. Our core purpose is to improve lives by increasing access to medicine around the world. So that key word for us is access. We help pharmaceutical companies reach patients that are outside of their core sphere of influence. We're helping patients access medicine that's not available in their country. And we have multiple different commercial channels and pathways to enable this access. So we're in a unique perspective to be headquartered in the US with offices in the UK, Ireland, Switzerland, but we essentially do business all over the world. And so some of these challenges that you're referring to, Jason, are real. And I think historically, I would say that our perspective has always been to try to maintain a discipline, to focus on what we control and try not to get caught up in too much into the things we don't control. But when there's real change and it's a lot of uncertainty on the horizon, I think it's a disservice to the business overall to not address the specific potential outcomes. And it's funny, every budgeting cycle, I get all of our EVPs that have to submit a budget that remind me that it's really hard to predict the future. And we almost start by just saying ditto, ditto, ditto. Okay, everybody acknowledges it's really hard to tell the future, but the best indicator sometimes is past performance or past change. And even if you're in new territory, trying to understand the best we can is worth doing, even if we're wrong. And again, I'm a convert from wait until something happens with confidence that you can respond to having some contingency plans set up for what might happen. Specific to, and you had mentioned the administration and with the U.S.'s stature within the global political and economic situation, it would be I think again. Malpractice to ignore the potential impacts that could happen in a global economic situation or in specific business models. So we're using some AI to help us predict what may be the scenarios that could be impacted. We're recognizing that in some cases, worst case scenarios could involve recessions or global recessions, that otherwise it could be more targeted, certain business models affected by tariffs, for example. So we're trying to lay all these risks out. We're trying to figure out which ones are relevant to our business model. And then we're working as we speak on contingency planning. What would happen if we were forced to scale down? How can we proactively try to maintain our business levels? And then with every risk, and this is not all the time does it work out, but we try to understand which risks may also be opportunities. And COVID was an example for us where at first we were, working from home suddenly over one weekend and everything was up in the air. We didn't know. And after a little bit of time, we were able to convert that into an opportunity as well. So eventually, once we have contingency planning in place, we'll then bring on the creative mindset and see if we can turn any of these into opportunities.
Excellent.
Great.
So having a vision, having a plan is obviously critical, so that people know how to operate. I mean, I think that's sort of a number one thing for leaders is to create that for people. So can you speak a little bit to, because things are going so fast now, and especially with AI being brought into this, it's about decisions. So how quickly are you able to make shifts and in this environment, and change your approach, creating decisions that are going to generate something moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a good question because with the way we look at decision making within our company, I think most of us feel like we don't do anything fast enough. Maybe this is a healthy insecurity that we bring to the table to say, how can we move faster? And a lot of the changes we've made at the senior management team level have been about trying to increase speed. And sometimes that's breaking down teams into smaller work groups. Okay. Sometimes that's just having the confidence, if it looks like it looks and it sounds like it sounds, it probably is what it is, and let's go ahead and do something about it. Some of it is about just having a plan in your back pocket, and we don't know what's going to happen yet, but we'll be ready when it does. So with a lot going on, I would think the speed is changing, but also so is the speed and availability of information for us to make decisions if we have a process that can be accelerated. So we don't want to skip any steps. I've learned that lesson the hard way as well. What was it? Fire first and aim later. We're kind of done with that. We've matured to a level where we don't want to take those risks anymore. But at the same point, the aiming process should be faster and more systematic than what we've had in the past. And that's what we're working on right now.
Gotcha. So part of it is research that you've got going on, and for these contingency plans or mitigation plans, whatever those are. But the other part is that you guys have to be on it.
Yeah.
You got to be ready to make the decisions when whatever lever is pulled.
That's right.
You got to be able to jump on it.
And I'd say that's where the art of decision making might come in, right? Okay. We've got a process that's systematic for contingency planning. When do you pull the trigger on that? When does it go from steadfast commitment to your plan and powering through versus pivoting or adjusting? And I've been accused in the past too about sticking with a plan for too long and thinking that it was just determination that was missing from the equation. I think again, when we say the art of something or even gut feel, I no longer think of those as throwaway subjective terms that mean you're not trying hard enough. I view those as the accumulation of your experience over time that gives you a better gut, or that gives you the better artistic decision-making background in order to be able to make the right decision at the time. So I don't have all the answers right now, but it's this process with art on top of it. And then I've also trust the team. And we've got a great owner and founder who gives us a lot of trust. There's a lot of alignment between his intentions and those of the senior management team. So I think that's an important part, and having the right team on board that is willing to go through the process and that you trust to make the right decision at the right time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, in thinking about all of that, have you already put in place some ideas and thoughts on how the company would protect itself from if this, then that?
Yeah, I think we've had some experience in the past. Worst case scenario would be downsizing because circumstances outside of our control would require it. We've been through that before, only once, and it was painful enough that we've now had better expense control so that we don't get overextended. But there are a series of ways that we could do that in depending on how impactful the situations might be. But then we're breaking it down into the different business models we have, because there is some diversity within the business models we have, and I'm trusting each EVP that runs a commercial division to determine how they might have a contingency plan, how they might adjust, how they might try to outgrow or look at it as an opportunity. And then likewise, we've got our company structured where the cross-functional departments like finance and accounting and HR they all have a dynamic leader in charge of them as well, trusting them to anticipate how they would respond if we were forced to, either with something very specific that affected maybe just one or two business units, or if something general might happen across the board. And I think we would all come together and do it together, but it would be an amalgamation of all the plans that each division and each department had.
So, as I'm listening to this, Steve, I'm thinking this is an amazing risk management approach to business. And that's not something that happens immediately. Obviously, in your younger years, risk management wasn't even something you were considering. But now you've matured, your business has matured. And so that process of getting to this maturity, is this a couple of years, 5 years? I mean, how long would you say this has taken your business to really dive into this and get something that's competent for you?
Yeah. I'd say probably a decade. But it's been continuous improvement. We've also absorbed a lot of growth, which is a great problem to have. over the time. But I'd say personally, it's been continuous since I started. And we mentioned, the early years of entrepreneurial, fire and spirit and go get it and we can do this type of attitude. I would also venture to say that if my 23-year-old self heard you say this is a great approach to risk management, he would not have believed that you were saying that to me sitting across his table, because it was literally just like put it all down on black and spin the wheel. Let's roll. We are going to figure this out. But like I said, I wouldn't want to go back to those days. I still think there's certain elements of an entrepreneurial spirit that can benefit even bigger companies as we grow. At the same time, the biggest lessons I learned are, I used to think that governance and contingency planning was, had a chilling effect on your ability to grow, or it was the brakes on the car, and who wants that, right? Yeah. And especially when we got into a cycle at times of having to accelerate away from this wave of doom that was following us, we would try to sell our way out of problems. And in hindsight, again, I don't wish that on anybody. And what's happened since then, and the reason I'm a full convert, is we spent so much wasted time fixing problems, and especially fixing when we made a big mistake. We're never going to do that again. What do we need to do? And when we put governance in place, I said, well, we're acknowledging that we're going to slow down. We're acknowledging sort of the end of the boom phase, and now we're just going to milk whatever. And that it ended up not being true. Yeah. What ended up being true was, now that we're not wasting time fixing big problems, we're spending our time on positive things that enhance growth, and we're sleeping at night. So these are good things if you're in business. And again, if any of this, and I love sharing this with people when I see people at different phases of business growth, if I've been there before and I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, just sticking with it. Anything that I can pass along that helps people get there faster than I did is, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. Governance and risk aversion are sort of they go together, right? Too much governance slows things way down, and maybe that covers your risk aversion because you don't have much risk.
But they also go together with growth.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
was my wake-up call. If you really want to grow, you've got to avoid. And this is another way of saying anybody who's invested and has a portfolio effect. You can't pick every stock. You're going to lose on some. But if you only have one stock, you're going to live and die by the one stock. If you spread things out, and then you got yourself covered for the long term. And similarly, if you want to grow overall, you eliminate mistakes is the number one way. Anybody who golfs, right? Sometimes I look and I don't golf enough because I'm running a business, but anybody who's looked back at their scorecard and said, well, if I would have just eliminated the 8, the 3 times I got an 8, and I actually draw a snowman on my scorecard when I score an 8, just to remind me of how, if I would have just eliminated those 3 8s, my score would have been so great. That's the same thing as saying, avoid the big mistakes, avoid the things that cost you emotional and financial capital. And then you have all this time to spend it on the growth thing, which is where we all want to be anyway. It's worth starting with this and then adding growth on top of it.
So just enough governance.
Yeah.
To avoid the 8s.
Yeah, I'd
say. Not too much. So there's also an art to that.
I think.
Right?
Probably.
Because there's a decisioning process in the governance and in the risk aversion or risk management.
Yeah.
So.
And if you get really good, you can then start avoiding the 7s and maybe get some people who think that way and they avoid the 6s. And then the team that wants to take it to the next level has even more to do. So I'm not even really putting a cap on it, but I would say, that's when it becomes the art of, right? And we work with a lot of really big we serve a lot of really big companies that have matured so much. They're protecting more than they are trying to grow. And sometimes that can be frustrating, but they're the example of we don't want to go that far. And then hair on fire entrepreneurial is the example of what we never want to go back to again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Tim, some final thoughts on what we've been talking about to wrap us up. What are your thoughts on, obviously, both Steve's insights, but how that applies to the people that you work with?
Yeah, so I think this is a great lesson. I mean, there's experience is the teacher. I mean, we learn by having challenges and problems as we go through life and through our business, entrepreneurial. Maybe the lesson is don't ever lose the entrepreneurial spirit, because when that dies, then you go to this risk aversion. And how do you lose that? I think sometimes we become too big too quickly, and we get to this protection mode. We're back into the reactive space, right, as opposed to the proactive or the creative world that really is where we want to thrive and where we want to grow. Because that's about the people, and it is all about the people.
Yeah.
And we do have to have these processes and things that help us to control the process and the business. But so great thoughts, great ideas. Certainly some nuggets for me.
For sure.
As you were speaking, ideas and thoughts were coming into my head, question-wise, but also, I can use this to help other people as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to learn more about applied leadership coaching, how to look at your business in a different perspective, how to figure out ways to think about growth, governance, all those different kind of things that we've been talking about today, go ahead and reach out to us at alccoaches.com. Tim will reach back out to you and figure out how to spend some time figuring out what you might need, and we'll go from there. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, Steve, for joining us today. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
And we will see you on the next one.